This could roll out into several parts, but we're not going to call it part one, part two, part three. It's just going to roll out if it happens to do that. The sermon title today, for those looking for that, is, the answer is simple: obey the commandments. The answer is simple. Obey the commandments. Anyone who has ever done it knows that it is nearly impossible to get modern man to admit that he should obey the laws of Elohim. Man has placed himself. Got to be careful when you place yourself, because you don't know where to place yourself. You might place yourself too high. Or if you're not so sure about yourself, you might place yourself too low and cause yourself a problem. But man has this automatic, I know where I belong. I know who I am. I know what I should do. And they place themselves at the pinnacle of knowledge, the pinnacle of ability, and any other category from which he attempts to glean power or ultimate authority. To attempt to engage in a discussion of the merits of the law of Elohim among the unchurched, or especially the educated, will draw you either walking away, or they'll stand there and look at you in dead silence as if you said something or did something that didn't look right or smell right, or you'll get there and it looks like you think, wow, did I cut one? What happened here? I'm just trying to talk about the Word of God. I thought I cut one. I don't know what happened there. And you wind up walking away. Nothing happens. Happens whether it be in face-to-face contact, whether it be in social media, no matter where. If you're dealing with people that don't believe in God, they just ignore you. They look at you like, what happened here? What's your problem? Yet this perfect world of intelligence appears to be falling apart, if anybody noticed. And the only answer of the best and the brightest, those ones that were giving you that little look, is to steal enough from the poor to ride out what they know is the coming economic collapse. And no matter how much they steal, when the collapse comes, then they'll loudly declare that they don't have enough to share with we, the unwashed masses. We got enough for us. We don't have enough for you. Yet notice that the Most High has a little bit more to say about hard times, and certainly has more to say about his true people. This is not necessarily about the tribulation, but I'm just talking about hard times in general. Maybe some people don't have those. If anybody's like that, I'd like to talk to you afterward, because I want to know how you get that way. The tribulation is a special testing of all of us, and we'll have different circumstances for all. But all world calamities are different for those who truly follow the will of Elohim than they are for those who refuse to do so. Let's drop anchor. Let's go to Psalms, the 37th chapter, the 14th verse. Psalms, the 37th chapter, the 14th verse, where it says, "The wicked have drawn out the sword, and they have trodden their bow, to cause the poor and needy to fall, to kill those who walk uprightly. Their sword shall enter into their heart, and their bows shall be broken. A little to the righteous is better than the abundance of many wicked. And the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but Yahweh upholds the righteous Yahweh knows the days of the upright. Yea, their inheritance shall be forever. They shall not be ashamed in an evil time. And I think you can agree that this is an evil time. And they shall be full in days of famine. But the wicked shall perish. Yea, the enemies of Yahweh shall be like the beauty of pastures. They are consumed. Like smoke, they vanish. The wicked borrows and never repays. But the righteous is gracious and giving. For his blessed ones inherit the earth, and those cursed by him shall be cut off. The steps of a good man are established by Yahweh, and he will delight in his way. Though he falls, he is not cast down. We all fall. We all make mistakes. We all find ourselves in a tight situation every once in a while, but it's not the end, and we know it. We may fall, but we're not cast down. For Yahweh upholds his hand. I have been young and am old, but I have not seen the righteous forsaken or his seed begging bread. All the day he is gracious and lends, and his seed is for a blessing. Turn away from evil and do good. And what will be the result? Live forever. For Yahweh loves judgment and does not forsake his saints. They are preserved forever. But the wicked's seed shall be cut off. Not only will there be no more wicked people, there will be no more wicked children of wicked people. Got to read between the lines and things become more clear. You see, there's a time set aside for the judgment of all evil that has been done on the earth. But again, it's best to practice righteousness at all times and the keeping of the way of Elohim even now. You see, if we're practicing it now, it'll be our normal manner. We'll not have to change greatly later on. We're watching evil take hold in the world. Even the people who have made claims to serve Elohim are rooting somehow for evil. Even if it is cloaked in this popular societal mores of these days. Most don't even realize what's going on. Those who know the law of Elohim, however, see it clearly. Sometimes a little bit too clearly. You try to explain to people, that's not what's going on. They just love what's happening. Things are working out for them. But the people of Elohim know that from the beginning, Elohim intended his holy ones to obey his will, intended his holy ones to keep his commandments. And all who follow Elohim, above all else, are acutely aware of the plan. Those who have fallen in with the world because of their double mind, somehow they just don't see it quite clearly. There's a problem there. So that brings you back to our title. The answer is simple. Obey the commandments. Now, we tend to forget the law of God. The world certainly has. As have many of the world's churches. Oh, you can't say that. Oh, I didn't say it. They did. They long ago errantly declared that the law was nailed to the cross and that it was no longer necessary to keep it. Yet, the Bible itself says something that is completely opposite to this opinion. And it is an opinion. An errant opinion, by the way. One that is not agreed with by the apostles. Certainly not agreed with by Yeshua himself. Notice, let's go to Isaiah, the 48th chapter, the 18th verse. Isaiah, the 48th chapter, the 18th verse, which says, "Oh, that you would look unto my commandments." Just take a look. Check it out. "Then your peace would be as a river, and your righteousness as the waves of the sea." Ever seen the waves of the sea? They just keep coming no matter what. Anything gets in the way, if you jump on it and you see people ride it, but you zig when you shouldn't have zagged, next thing you know. That's why to this day, I don't surfboard. I don't surfboard. John, the 14th chapter, the 21st verse. Won't see me anywhere near a surfboard. Hang out with the Beach Boys if you wish, but not my thing. John, the 14th chapter, the 21st verse, where it says, "He that has my commandments and keeps them, he it is that loves me. And he that loves me shall be loved of my Father. And I will love him and will manifest myself to him." And then for those who want to say that the law was done away, I revert you one more time to Matthew, the 5th chapter, the 17th verse. Matthew, the 5th chapter, the 17th verse, where it says, "Think not that I am come to undo the law or the prophets. I am not come to undo, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, until heaven and earth pass away, and not one jot or one tittle shall pass from the law until all is fulfilled." Jots and tittles, that would be punctuation. There won't be one period, one crossed I, one dotted T removed until all is fulfilled. Has Yeshua returned? No. Has the world ended? Even the evil hasn't ended yet. Therefore, is the law done away? No. 19. "Whosoever therefore shall undo one of these least commandments," and I think we've already found out that most of the churches in the world have done this. "Whosoever shall undo one of the least commandments and shall teach men so," and I think we've already found that they've done this, "he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven." Now, a lot of people misunderstand that. They automatically assume, well, let's finish it. "But whomsoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." No, it didn't say we were there or not there. It just said that you be called the least. That's an interesting little distinction there. Now, just because you're being called something, does that mean you're there? Does it mean you're going to be there? No, we talk about each other on the phone all the time. Are you there when it's done? No. Shut up, you're talking about gossip, but you don't have to be there to be talked about there. Matter of fact, in this case, it seems to be implying that you'll be talked about there, but you won't be there. You see, from Adam and Eve up to the present, we have witnessed the unchecked evil and sin that has come forth in the world. As a result, most of it came as a result of man's refusal to obey the law of Elohim. All of this darkness has come into this world, and we act as if it just happened, as if we had no control over it. But if this is true, it's all the more reason why the commandments and the law will never be taken away in this life And it appears that there will be some structure forever. But we haven't understood that. We have a problem with that. I don't want anybody telling me what to do. Somebody needs to. You certainly don't seem to be doing a very good job of it yourself. Proverbs, the 25th chapter, the 28th verse. Interesting little thing I found. It says, he that has no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. In other words, anybody can come in and take anything they want from you anytime they want, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it would appear that the entire world is broken down and without walls. There's no sense of propriety. No one seems to be able to exercise self-control in any area of their lives. And they think that this is a good way to be. Oh, he got attitude. I like him. You hear it all the time. Violence can explode at any point for any reason, and nearly every program on television is full of graphic violence, inappropriate sexual activity, homosexuality, vile language. And that's before 7 o'clock. And the religious programming is devolving into political spectacle. It's as if no one knows what is law, and the rest don't care. Perhaps it's time for a simple review of the 10 Commandments for the few of us who still believe we should be keeping them. And you're going to look around and find that there are fewer and fewer of us every day. Hey, just look around here. You don't have to go out there, just look around here. I think we might pull off a baker's dozen today. We might. We might. But we need a review. A review will at least allow us to remain mindful of what is expected of us as believers, for clarity and just a little change from the usual read of Exodus 20, which is usually where you go. We're going to read from Deuteronomy 5. Reads a little bit different, but it is exactly the same. The commandments are the same, as most important things in this book are repeated more than once. This is the one thing that most people will find in their personal studies. We'll look at them and dig deeper into all aspects of each command. And we will find out in reading through this why the world seems to have never been able to come together as a home of peace and love. Let's get started. Deuteronomy, the 5th chapter, 1st verse. You're going to be amazed at how short this is, but you're going to be even more amazed at how powerful the concepts are. And you're going to look around and start to see things that I probably don't see, that say, wow, if only that changed, how much better would things be? Deuteronomy, the 5th chapter, the 1st verse, where it says, and Moses called all Israel and said unto them, hear, O Israel, the statutes and judgments which I speak in your ears this day, that you may learn them and keep and do them. Yahweh our Elohim made a covenant with us in Horeb. Yahweh made not this covenant with our fathers, but with us, even us, who are all of us here alive this day, making very clear, I'm talking to you. That's what he's doing. just drawing it in a little tighter and saying, hey, we're talking to you. Not your fathers, not your mothers, not you. All who are alive here on this day. Verse 4. Yahweh talked with us face to face in the mount out of the midst of the fire. I stood between Yahweh and you at that time to show you the word of Yahweh. For you were afraid by reason of the fire and went not up onto the mount, saying, I am Yahweh, your Elohim, which brought you out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. Verse 7. You shall have no other Elohims and no other gods before me. The word gods or Elohim in this passage may be regarded as denoting not only the various objects of religious worship in the modern world, but also all the objects of supreme regard, affection, or esteem given to things that are not God. To acknowledge Yahweh as our Elohim is to love him supremely, to fear his power, not as a monster or a creature, but to respect that power and recognize that this power is used only for the orderly conduct of a universe created by him. We bow before Elohim with all the heart and serve him throughout all our days in absolute preference to every other natural or spiritual being, as this is the only true, natural, and proper acknowledgement of Elohim. We know we render the same service to no other. To no other. We acknowledge that this person, this entity, is our Elohim, is our God. In this conduct, we have to be careful. Because if we recognize any other as this, we've elevated that being in regard to character, in terms of station. We've made it a God in the place of Elohim. We remove the true God in our hearts from his own character of infinite glory and excellence, and from that exalted station which he holds as the infinite ruler and benefactor of the universe, we've suddenly decided, maybe we'll try that one. Can't do that. This sin is a complication of wickedness, wonderfully various and dreadful to us all. But we get to that point where something happens and you want to look for something. Maybe we can, but we forget something. While we're here, 6,000 roads down. We've gone down 6,000 years almost. We're at about 5,800. I don't know where we are. Everybody that shows me a Hebrew calendar and says we're here, it's on some different point. Depending on which one you talk to, you're 30 years away, 40 years away, 50 years away, next year, or some say he's already come. We don't know. So let's just say we know that there was a 66,000 year period, and we're somewhere near the end of it. But the time went too long. You know how we are. Wow, where's he at? Let's find something else. So you start this. And we're not the first ones. We're not the first ones. It started off with one faith. Now you got about 5,000. One for every year if you want to go that way. All from one. And they all say, our God is the only one. So somebody broke the first one right away. Thou shalt not have any other gods or Elohims before me. So if they broke one, makes sense that they also broke two. Verse 8. You should not make you any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the waters beneath the earth. You should not bow down yourselves unto them, nor shall serve them. For I, Yahweh, your Elohim, am a jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. Is he saying that he's going to get each one individually? No. He's saying that your sins are handed down to each succeeding generation through the mistakes you made. And if they make the same ones, they get the same. He's not saying I did it because of you, because he's already said somewhere else that I'm not going to punish the sons for the sins of the fathers. But if they commit the same sin, oh yeah, they're going to get the same thing. It's showing mercy, verse 10, unto thousands of them that love me and what? Keep my commandments. For something that's unimportant, why does it keep coming up? Fascinating. It keeps coming up. You see, among half-freed spiritual slaves to the evil one, it was necessary to discourage our symbolism. We needed the teaching not of painters and sculptors. That's where idols come from. If you've been in those churches, you know what I'm talking about. But you didn't need teaching of painters or sculptors. Had plenty of that. What we needed was prophets. Nevertheless, the literal force of the words, thou shalt not make to yourself a graven image, not made with the idea of paying it any sort of religious reverence. It's therefore not against the letter of the commandment. So why is it still necessary to republish that commandment to we wonderful believers who don't do anything that you said don't do? This answer to that question is because there is in the human mind a perilous tendency to worship idols, which needs to be incessantly resisted. Men are way too carnal, much too sensuous, much too inherently superstitious to be content with a pure, simple, spiritual faith that doesn't point at anything and say, that's like me. So what happens? It's so much easier to bow the head to a statue than it is to cleanse the heart. So much easier to count beads on a strand or light a candle in service to a statue than it is to be kind and be truthful and show humility. That's just too hard. That's too simple. There's got to be more to it than that. Right? Wrong. You see, believers have grabbed for material images and forms of, don't miss this, forms of musical expression that almost invariably result in the use of these inferior substitutes of physicality for producing religious excitement. You think I'm kidding? Show up at just about any church where you hear a drum beat tomorrow morning. You hear some jumping and howling, and I ain't trying to talk about nobody, I'm just saying what I'm saying. They do all of this because this produces religious excitement, believing this mistaken cultural excitement is an acceptable substitute for pure faith. They cloak it in physical religion, thinking that it is to substitute ultimately the excitement for righteousness. It is to base our religion upon a lie that the gilded thing of our idolatry is somehow necessary to make Elohim more real to us, to bring him closer to us, when in point of fact, it's pulling our physicality away from the spirituality he wants in us all. All those things that we think we need to bring him closer: crosses, pop music, statues, shouting. All of these can become idols when mistaken for the purity of a relationship with the Almighty, with Elohim. Which brings us to verse 11, number 3. Thou shalt not take the name of Yahweh your Elohim in vain. For Yahweh will not hold him guiltless that takes his name in vain. Now, what does it mean to take his name in vain? That is to say it's of no purpose. That is to trifle with omnipotence. It is to treat him as though he were not important to us, or in our own sly way become more defiant than the very devils who do believe. But we choose not to tremble. Have we profaned Elohim's name by taking it in our mouths too lightly, taking it irreverently, and without the design of doing him honor? Have you ever gotten mad and just, oh, Jesus, as if your peak was his fault? You used the name in vain. And whatever truth it contains to those who still believe him to be their Messiah, you took them in vain also. You don't ever hear anybody talking about, oh, Yeshua. No. What have they been taught for thousands of years? Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. You weren't talking about God. You were mad about something. Come on now. Just be real. Quit playing. You used the name in vain. And whatever truth that remains there for those who still use it, you still went against not only your God, theirs too. Remove it. Remove it from your lips so as not to be guilty of this sin. Profaneness, even in these small doses, is eminently the source of corruption to the whole character. Almost all moral attributes and employments operate mutually as causes and effects. Thus, irreverence of thought generates profaneness of expression. Profaneness of expression, in its turn, generates irreverence of thoughts. Thus, universally, the mind moves the tongue. And the tongue, again, in its turn, will flip and move the mind. The person who thinks evil will always speak and eventually act in an evil way. It's just the way it is. The person who thinks evil will eventually act evilly. Profanity, particularly that of the tongue, naturally introduces men to evil companions. I have to go back to those days riding bus to school, and you sit back in the back and with the guys, and you heard them. I ain't gonna say it up here. You heard it all before. Y'all get mad enough, I'll probably hear it around here. But you get back there in the back, and you think you back there cussing with those fools back there. You think you sound cool, but the old lady at the front is looking back there like. Remember that? Y'all remember that though? I'm not the only one. I'm sure I wasn't the only one back there. I was back there though. Probably why I'm up here. I'm gonna get you back for that. I want you to see what I went through. Yeah. But you remember that look? Be the little lady sitting up in the front. Probably somebody kind of looking like, I won't point nobody out there, turn around and go just like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably true. You do that now, somebody might bust a cap on you. It is what it is. But the old ladies weren't scared back then. And then you had the muddeers with.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what you need now. Not no man, no dress, though, a real one. I knew a real one. I knew a real one. I knew a couple of real ones. My grandmother was one, and Sam's grandmother was another one, but I ain't gonna go there. But we got those now. You need them. It's real. But you see, everything leads to bigger things. And that's really it. The Bible even does this. Everything started out physical in the old. When it got to the new, and there was spiritual stuff woven in there leading you toward what was coming. But you knew that this was not the end of it. He didn't end the sacrifices because they were of no longer necessity. They never were. Killing an animal is never going to substitute you sinning. It's never going to make up for it. All the blood in the world isn't going to do it. But what it was there for was to show us. This is the physical manifestation of what you just did. Something bled to death because of that. The spiritual part of it that comes lets you know. Maybe if I don't even think about it, I will never come to the point where I want to do it. Just as irreverence of thought generates profaneness of expression, first comes thought, then comes deed. There is a progression that has to follow. If you follow it to its end, if you got sense, I heard somebody say a long time ago, somebody I would have never thought would have made that much sense, but David Lee, sorry. But it is like that. He said, I've been to the edge. I stood and looked down. I lost a lot of friends there. Ain't got no time to mess around. There's a point where I don't care how bad or crazy something is, you get to a point where, hey, I've seen enough. Gotta change. Gotta do something different. To this end, fix our minds in a state of solemnity. Control at all times that sense that if I said it, but maybe I shouldn't have. Fix it in your mind to be careful even before you say it, no matter how small and flippant you might think, oh, I didn't mean nothing, nobody heard it. Why does it say somewhere else that you will be held responsible for every idle word? There's a reason for that. And if you follow it to its ultimate end, you could lose everything associated with, including your hereafter. Which brings us to verse 12. Number 4, and this is the big one. Keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it or keep it holy. As Yahweh, your Elohim, has commanded you, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yahweh your Elohim. In it you shall not do any work. You, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your ox, nor your donkey, nor your jenny, if you remember, nor any of your cattle, nor your stranger that is within your gates, that your manservant and your maidservant may rest as well as you. And remember that you were a servant in the land of Egypt, and that Yahweh your Elohim brought you out thence through a mighty hand and by a stretched out arm. Therefore Yahweh your Elohim commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. Far too much time has been wasted trying to force man to keep the Sabbath according to the whims of man, making it a chore that it was never intended to be. Let's break it down to some simplicity here. Not get all, can you do that? Should do that? She said, I'll be sure. Hold up. You work your job, you don't work your job. You don't work your job, paid or not. That's the basis of it. You don't work your job, whether you get paid or not. This is because if you work, you're breaking the Sabbath. Okay, can you go to a secular musical or theatrical event? Is that breaking the Sabbath? What you going to see, Wicked? I think the laughing gave you your answer. All right? You going to see Jesus Christ Superstar? Okay. You got your answer. One. In all things done on the Sabbath, two questions should come to mind. Number one, was our design in the day's observance paid to the Sabbath principally been intended to glorify Elohim? Number one. If you only you know the answer to that. I can't give you that answer. Some of us gave ourselves answers right then. Number two, has your aim in sanctifying the Sabbath been the sanctification of your spiritual space, according to things that uplift yourself or others in God or in Elohim? If it wasn't, you might want to rethink that. There's nothing wrong with visiting the sick, nothing wrong with helping the downtrodden. The question you have to ask yourself is, was true worship a part of that day? You know that. I can't tell you that. If these things were truly satisfied, don't worry about what others say about your Sabbath worship. Their incessant need to tell you what's right and wrong says all of a sudden now you're not worshiping God on the Sabbath, you're worshiping them on the Sabbath. Cut them off. You see, their incessant need to control your Sabbath may break your Sabbath by giving it over to them. Don't do that. Don't do that. This is between you and your Elohim, no one else. He's told you what to do. Be somewhere, worship him, if that is possible. Everybody doesn't have a church anywhere near them. You should see some of these people after a few years with the things that they go through alone. Some of them even eventually give up. Oh, I just went to the mall because there was nothing. Well, since I was there, I bought something, and there you go. We take it for granted that we've got somewhere to be every week. Don't. Because the day is coming when either it's not going to be there or you're going to be. We already talked about it this morning. It's already in plan that they're going to change that day to the day that he didn't say. And at that point, you're going to have to show up somewhere or else. We haven't gotten there yet. So long as we still have the ability to do this, let's do it, and let's do it right. And let's not let somebody else tell you how to do it. Verse 16, number 5. Now it gets interesting. Honor your father and your mother as Yahweh, your Elohim, has commanded you, that your days may be prolonged and that it may go well with you in the land which Yahweh, your Elohim, gives you. The duties of children are in the language of the Decalogue, summed up in one word: honor. Honor thy father and thy mother. No word could well have been more happily chosen. The duties required by it seem to be reducible under 3 general headings. Number 1, reverence. There may occur cases in which the parental character is as far as possible from all that could inspire either reverence or love, but still, how much soever this may be the case, there is a respect due to the person of a parent. For the very relation's sake, just as there is an official respect due to the person of a magistrate on account of the station he occupies, independently of the claims of personal character. You don't know everything anyway, so don't even go there. We saw disrespect of President Obama by some calling him simply by his last name. This was the first I ever heard of anyone being called by a presidential number when they started to mix him up with Henry Aaron and call him 44. Many now disrespect President Trump by calling him 45, I guess saying that he's going to blow the country up. I don't know. But whatever, they call him 45. That's the 45th president, I assume, rather than using his name. The same rules apply here. Maybe not as strictly, because these aren't your parents in any way, shape, or form, but you do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Most especially in a family concern. This respect is not the dictate of any servile fear. It is associated with love, and it is proportional to it. It might be defined a reverential familiarity, but it is what it is. You give a person the respect of the office they hold. And if that office happens to be a parent, God has already given you something. He says, if you're going to do this, I'm going to let you live longer than you normally would. Because if you go against them, chances are you ain't going to make it very far. Number 2, obedience. If they're telling you to do something and they're feeding you, putting clothes on you, doing the things that keep you going that you couldn't do for yourself, why not obey? It is right to obey. Which brings us to 3, maintenance. This, of course, comes into application only in certain circumstances, but the obligation is universal. They take care of you when you can't take care of yourself. Because the time will come, Lord, don't I know it, that they can't take care of themselves, and you return the favor. The respect is in good, and in good is in bad. It doesn't really matter. You got examples all the way through the Bible. Think of Aaron's stricken silence when his two eldest, Nadab and Abihu, died by the fire of Elohim for offering unauthorized or strange fire in the holy place. Did he stop loving his sons? No. He had no choice but to back off because he knew that they were doing something they were told not to do. What's he going to do? God, you can't do this, my son. No. No. You back off and let it go. You have no other choice. You have no other choice. Aaron held his peace. Did that mean he didn't love his sons? No. He loved God more. Think of Jacob's wail over his lost Joseph. Imagine how he felt when he found out later on that he hadn't lost his son, but his son now was all but ruling Egypt. But that's not the part that I thought, yeah, he's happy about that, but I'm all wondering now, how did he feel about the sons that sold him to the Bedouins? It's complicated. It's deep. We want to make it simple. It's not. It's not. But we've got to think on all those. If you're gonna drive a car, you better make sure all those gears are working. If you're gonna drive a mind, you better make sure all those gears are working. Before you say, "Oh, I can do this season." No, it's not. Think about David. We went in depth about this a little few weeks back about David's outburst of weeping over Absalom. What's he supposed to do? Just turn Absalom loose? He didn't want him killed, but he had no choice because he was trying to kill him. He had no choice. He told him not to do it, and they did it anyway because they knew there was no other way. They knew there was no other way. They had no choice. But does that mean he didn't still love his son? He loved his son. And on some deep level, somewhere down there, I suspect his son loved him too. But sometimes when the world gets in there too tough, it complicates things to a point where you don't know what you feel. You don't know what you think. You don't know what you are. And you have to figure out what it is and get there and do it right. The character was not there, but the love was still there. A life of mutual respect engenders a life of considerable length. Perhaps if done properly, a life that is extended. How long? If you do it right, forever. Which brings us to verse 17, the sixth commandment. Simple one, real simple one. Thou shalt not kill. That word kill in Hebrew is ratzak. That means to go out and plan to kill someone. Not you get into a fight. No. This is where you say, I'm going to do this. We're going to go take him out. The primary aim, of course, of the commandment is to inculcate reverence for human life. Man is rather, or should be, his life should be sacred, man to man. But for the tendency of the selfishness which makes every bad man his own idol, each man's life would be sacred in each man's eyes, you would think. But once you want something bad enough, you'd be amazed at the stupid things you will do. But you see, it's faith in Elohim that has made it so. To set out to take a human life and sin, it doesn't get much simpler than that. You say, I'm going to kill this person for whatever reason. Everybody's got one. I can't sit here and think of them all. My mind don't work that way. And I'm not saying yours is, but I'm saying somewhere between the two of us, I'm sure we can come up with something. All this saying, do not take another human life. Everybody, as much as we idolize war, sorry, that was a plan of taking human life, just on a higher level. And that kind of goes against that. Why do you think from the beginning? Now, when you say, well, God said war against, he told those people to kill those people, and he said, I will do it. Why? Because he can raise them up. I want to ask you, when you say you're going to go take out Iran, how many of them can you raise up? How many of them have we raised up from Iraq? How many of them have we raised up from Vietnam? Korea, north or south. Back then, there was no north and south. We just killed them all. We divided them into north and south and let them kill each other, and they weren't doing it fast enough, so we go in there and do it for them. Don't get me started, please. The bottom line, thou shalt not kill. This brings us to verse 18, number 7. Thou shalt, neither shall you commit adultery. Or polygamy for you Mormons out there. Or having more wives and husbands than one at a time. Just in case somebody was wondering what I was talking about. Oh, he's dissing the Mormons. No, they diss themselves. They do it. For this is contrary to the primitive institution and law that was set forth in Genesis 2:24. But you see, incest on the same level of lewdness is also sin, and committed by those who will go after their kindred. Can't get much sicker than that. But some do that. Also brings into account fornication, which is the defiling of an unmarried woman. Adultery is a direct sin against this commandment, and it is a particular kind of uncleanness that is expressly named in it. This sin is extremely heinous because there's not only an injury done to the woman by setting her into a course of unfaithfulness and even downright marital perjury, thereby hazarding her salvation if she is a believer. But to the man also in whom she is concerned by robbing him of the incommunicable right that he has in his wife. Think about it, you'll understand what I'm saying. This proves it to be the highest injustice, because he didn't even get a chance. He looked up and all of a sudden something that he thought was intact isn't anymore. And that might be, in adding this injury, why it ends in death. Why? Because the injury offers no hope of reparation. That's why death was inflicted on the adulterer according to the Mosaic law. Let's go to Leviticus, the 20th chapter, the 10th verse. There's a little interesting little something there I want to point out. Christ went or danced around it, but he showed him something. Leviticus, the 20th chapter, the 10th verse. Leviticus, the 20th chapter, the 10th verse, where it says, the man who commits adultery with another man's wife, he who commits adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress, shall surely be put to death. Now, when they brought the woman caught in adultery to Yeshua, notice they only brought the woman. Question. Why didn't they bring the man? I have a theory. I have a theory, but I want to see what you all say. Why didn't they bring the man? People don't change. Same physiology, same psychology. What do we like to do now when it's somebody we like? When it's somebody that's important to us? When it's a celebrity? Oh no, it's a horrible thing they did to so-and-so, so-and-so. All he did was rape her. Let him go. Now, since nobody had any ideas, I might make a suggestion. Perhaps the man was Caiaphas or some other leader in the Jewish community. Just something to think about. I might be wrong. If I am, I'm sorry. But the fact of the matter is, the man is out there, and we gonna find out who it is eventually at the great white throne, if no other time. So, a good guess is go. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. I could be wrong. It could have been somebody else. But for sure it was somebody. Because this says in Leviticus 22, to bring the man and the woman. They only brought one, so they were protecting somebody. Can we agree at least to that? Yes. Thank you very much. This is the issue here. You got to deal honestly with this. And every little piece of this proves that there's some real problems in how we live. And that's why we don't like laws. We don't like commandments, because all of a sudden now our little hands are tied on the little stuff we want to do. Time out for that. But you see, this commandment strikes at all unclean thoughts and desires. Our Savior acquaints us and tells us that there is this adultery of the heart. Namely, when the thoughts and inward inclinations of the mind are corrupted and are preparative to outward defilements, as I said before, first comes thought, then comes deed. This brings us to verse 19, number 8. Neither shall thou steal. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Now, many believe that this is simple taking by stealth. It's taking by stealth that which does not belong to you. But there's far more to it than that, obviously. Yes, stealing is taking away that which is none of yours. Or more fully thus, it is an unjust taking away or detaining from any man what is his proper goods. In other words, you sneak and take it and he doesn't even know it's gone without his consent. Deceit in buying and selling and trading and merchandising is here forbid. The buyer is guilty of deceit when he knows the condition, use, and advantage that he gives over an object that he knows he sold and it wasn't worth. That's theft. Oh no, I didn't. There was no. It was as is and shown. But yeah, but you knew what it was as. It's because you knew what it is before you went to go shown anything. So if you knew it wasn't any good, why are you trying to sell it? Throw it away like any other junk. No, I'm not banging on some used car salesmen, but they are very guilty of that. Don't go that further. I know what I'm talking about there, but computer salesmen also. Especially the old ones. But we've reached that point where we've got to understand that anyone that does anything cunningly and tries to get money out of it, knowing it wasn't worth it, that's theft. The seller is guilty of theft. There is often an original difference between mindsets, between those who would do these things and those who think, you're justified within your own mind. Say, I didn't know it was that bad off. Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. They possess a natural turn for shuffling and a dexterity in deceit. They'll prefer at any time gain over loss, even if it's to be tricking someone. Used to be, they used to always tell you, I think I've even read it where they say, well, if most of the people that would do that are low-end poor folks, then why are they teaching it in marketing classes in colleges now? Why are they teaching it in advertising courses in colleges now? So now you got folks walking around with degrees. They're the biggest thieves walking. It is what it is. If you, no matter what chicanery you set out to do, and you're getting someone's money for something that you knew when you sold it was substandard, you're stealing. Period. End of story. Next. Number 9. Neither shall you bear false witness against your neighbor. This simply speaks of lying to or about others. It also speaks of lying in civil court for any reason. This is especially true this is rampant in the modern courtroom. But false witnessing is not confined to the courts of justice. It can happen in the home, in the street, out in the field. It finds its place wherever it is, nor even when evident lying is practiced. You see, a false word from a false heart or a true word from a false heart are both false witnesses. They're both liars. Liars are false witnesses. Who knows how many a strife they've raised? The betrayer is a false witness. We're not to be silent concerning evil if we know about it. We can't hide mischief just because we knew the people that did it. Oh, my son did. Out. Take him out. Oh, you can't do that. Okay. When he comes after you, don't come to me and say, I won't do it. No, too late now. I can't do it because how do I know you're not going to turn around and say he didn't do it again? In order to, I got to keep the peace in the family. Yeah. Could have kept the soft silverware in his family if you'd have handled that last week. This is to betray righteousness. But those who betray secrets, which can be kept with good conscience, that's the other end of it. Why pry into your neighbor's concerns in order with, just, oh, wow, did you hear about so-and-so? Now we're gossiping. That's false witness in a way. They told you not to tell it. You told anyway. In a way, that's kind of false witness. It may not be false what you're saying, but you did it under false pretense. There are false witnesses who will take up an evil accusation against their neighbor behind their backs. That's the worst as far as God is concerned. Backbiters. They said there are people that are going to not make it in because of stuff they did way before. But we have to understand that open liars, if you openly lie about someone, they got the opportunity to defend themselves. But if you're going to be sneaking behind somebody's back and saying stuff about them, how do they defend themselves against that? How can they defend against that? They can't do it. Oh, honey is in your mouth, but poison is in your heart. Every word from a false heart, be it blame or praise, is false witness. A false witness shall not remain unpunished. You might get away with it for a while, but you got to stand before the judge of all at some point. You might not do it on the earth, but you'll certainly have to do it at the great white throne judgment. Which brings us to the last one. Verse 21, number 10. Neither shall you covet or desire your neighbor's wife, neither shall you covet your neighbor's house, his field, his manservant, his maidservant, his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. Oh, we all want something we don't have. This defies the pure and true nature of contentment, but that's who we are. We're humans. We see some stuff that we want that we can't afford right now. It is what it is. And this we may learn from if we continue to live in it. Concerning covetousness, we learn that true contentment is the opposite of covetousness. True contentment is the opposite of covetousness, and therefore is rightly defined as a cessation of all covetous desires. In other words, being happy with what you have. Not saying that you're not going to do any better, you're not going to get better, things aren't going to get better for you, but this is where I am now. I can deal with that. Instead of, ooh, nothing like that. I want that. And I'm going to figure out what. Leave that alone. Leave that alone. You see, contentment denotes two things. First, the desire of what is absent from you is removed. Secondly, there's a satisfaction in what you possess. Oh, you hear them all the time singing about, the grass is greener on the other side. But would you like their water bill? Would you really like their water bill? That's why you didn't water yours, because you didn't want that water bill. So why do you want that grass? It is what it is. For this is certain. Blues singers often sing about how good how sweet stolen goods are. That's why I don't listen to the blues anymore. Used to play them. Don't listen to it anymore, because I don't want that in my mind. You ain't gonna think. You don't know that. Leave it alone. I left it alone. We must learn as believers to be satisfied with what we have, or make honest efforts to improve ourselves to a point where we can obtain what we want. Or if that's not going to happen, reach a point where we can become satisfied with what we have. For to covet constantly is comparable to lust. And we know that lust is sin. Verse 22. These words Yahweh spoke unto all your assembly in the mount out of the midst of the fire of the cloud and of the thick darkness with a great voice. And he added no more, and he wrote them in 2 tables of stone and delivered them unto me. And man has been avoiding them, and we ain't got to do that. No, why we got to do that? No, it's done away. It was nailed to the cross. So was he, but he got up. He got up and reinforced everything. He came back. Do you think the law stayed there? No. We have to learn that the reason the world is in the messed up state it's in is because we have taken this law and decided, well, you don't have to do that, or it's done away, or you don't have to do that. Look out the window and see the result of you don't have to do that. End of story. Yahweh bless you all.
in the world. I've only